right, so I've given you a short introduction to Stoicism, and now we have some time to take some questions from the audience.
There's a rise in Stoicism in the recent years. What do you think is the reason for that?
Well, as I was saying in the introduction, quite simply, a lot of people are moving away from religion. All right, ever since World War II, with the rise of science and facts, faith has gone down. You know, we can't believe in Santa Claus, we believe in science. A lot of people simply do not believe in the miracles of their religions. Okay, virgin birth, angels coming down from the sky. For them, the modern human being is scientific in their approach. They're based on facts and proof and what is and what's not. So they're just not convinced about religion anymore. So at the same time, there's a big vacuum in our soul, in our psyche, because we need some guidance, we need some moral compass to guide us through life. And Greek philosophy and Stoicism offer us a sense of living with values, certain values, like, as I said, wisdom, justice, moderation, and courage. 4 beautiful virtues that we can live our life in order to reach happiness, eudaimonia. So, with religion out of the equation, modern man has been left to live according to virtues, values. High values can give us an equally fulfilling life and a path to happiness, to find happiness, because that's the point of we all want. That's what religion has served all these years, is to give people a path to happiness, right? A path to live their life. And I believe that it can also, as I said, many religions have integrated the ancient Greek values. So you do find these 4 virtues in Christianity. You even find it in Islam, you find it in Buddhism. So if we take away all of the decorum and the outer trappings of religions and labels, you will crystallize and see that in order to all live peacefully with one another and with ourselves, we only really need these 4 virtues. And a couple of other virtues. Go ahead and add a couple of good virtues. But if we just learn to live with these 4 virtues, we can live a very high quality life and maybe do away with wars. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm not discouraging anyone to stop their religious practice. You simply asked me why modern man is turning to their roots, and especially Western man, if you like, is turning back to their own Western roots. Yes, please.
When it comes to personal relationships, let's suppose I'm in a difficult relationship. There are many exhausting arguments, and the situation even causes me anxiety. But there's also love and a lot of good memories. How can I use my logic and control my emotion and recognize that this is toxic and I have to let go of that and accept the fact that the loss and the breakup will also cause me emotional pain? How can I, find the balance between logic and the acceptance of the emotional pain of losing someone because he's not good for you anymore?
Okay, that's a very good question. Listen, there's actually 2 things you can do. You can decide to stay in this relationship and practice your Stoic principles and your Stoic way of apatheia and detachment, and use it as a something where you're going to be practicing your belief, your way of life. Or you will come to the point where you say, this is just too challenging and too toxic, and it's just not good for me, and it's not good for the other person, and therefore I will take the rational decision to leave that person despite it being very painful. So you can apply reason and logos, as is the main aspect of Stoicism. You can apply reason within the relationship while you're having an argument, or you can apply reason to break away and start a new life. Either way, you're going to be facing obstacles in your life. Now, you can choose your battles. You have free will to choose your battles. You can pick your battles. So we can take both scenarios. The second scenario is easier to discuss, and then I'll get to the more complicated scenario of staying. The second scenario is, thank you very much for all the memories. You've been wonderful. We've shared wonderful times, but we're just not compatible. We don't have a common future. We don't have common values, and we keep arguing. This is draining me. This is draining you, and we break up. So, in the beginning, when you break up, you will feel pain. And that's okay to feel pain. I mean, Stoicism doesn't say to stop feeling pain altogether. But, as you know, many people dramatize. They over-sentimentalize. They're over-emotional. And they make a drama out of a bad situation. So, the way you break up doesn't have to be so dramatic for you if you keep exercising your logos and your values. So you will have less of a painful breakup. There will be some pain, but knowing that you took the right decision for your future will make it easier for you, and you just move on to your next challenging relationship, because either way relationships are challenging, whether you be a parent or a romantic relationship or with your boss. So let's then go to the first choice, which would be to stay in that relationship and learn and grow through it. There, of course, you will have that wonderful dichotomy of control where, first of all, you will be able to, within arguments, you won't be so emotional. You will be more detached, more objective, taking things less personally, realizing that a lot of the stuff is that person's projection, so you don't have to get caught up in it. So reason and logic will help you to debate in a better way with your partner by you dismantling their argument, because a lot of the arguments you hear might be not founded on reason and logic. So you, like a good lawyer does, if you like, using logos, and you can prove to that person certain failings in their own reasoning. So you will use your clarity of thought to dismantle their own arguments. So you will practice the art of properly arguing without getting yourself emotional, in cool, calm and collected way, proving to them through questioning them, as Socrates did. You can use the system of Socrates by asking that person questions and helping them for themselves to realize their own error, and of course using reason, reflecting on your own self and how you are behaving, and if your thoughts are correct, looking at your own toxic thoughts, because one fire feeds the other fire. So if you could just dismantle your own emotionalisms, your own unfounded thinking, you will be able to navigate these arguments more skillfully and practice these virtues of fairness, of courage, of wisdom, of moderation. You'll be able to practice them in your own relationship. So which way you're going to go, I can't decide for you, but how does that sound to you?
Very helpful, very clarifying.
Clarifying?
Yes, thank you.
I'm glad about that.
I wanted to ask you, of all the Stoics that you've studied, what would you say was the most important one in terms of philosophy, in terms of what he taught?
Oh gosh.
If you just if it's sort of stuck, what would stick?
Well, I tell you, I love Marcus Aurelius. I love his writings. At the same time, I can't help but identify myself with Epictetus. I admire Epictetus as a former slave who was able to educate himself and find wisdom and find goodness in his heart despite all the difficulties he had been through. I have only awe and admiration for such a person who went later on to found his own school in Nicopolis in Greece, which I actually visit once a year. Going towards Lefkada, I pass through Nicopolis every year as a homage to Epictetus. He was, for me, a great man. And of course Marcus Aurelius for completely different reasons, because also Marcus Aurelius must have been the loneliest man on earth, being the head of the whole Roman Empire, i.e. the world. How lonely could that man have been, and yet also come up with these profound, wise sayings. But going back to the original source of Stoicism, the first Stoic, you can say, is Socrates. And Socrates, for me, is above all else, because Socrates was willing to give his life for his values and his beliefs. Similar to how the Christians admire Christ and how he gave his life on the cross for different reasons, but I admire people who embody their teachings, not just teach. And Socrates embodied his teachings and was the flame, the light in the darkness, the initiator of all of these, the Western world, the Enlightenment, all go back to Socrates and his the beginning of scientific reasoning, the beginning of reasoning and the demystification of our world. Otherwise we would still be in a world of magic and sorcery and, you know, just falsehoods. The beginning of rational, clear, scientific thinking combined with empathy and love is represented for me in Socrates. So, that kind of thing. I'd like for you to make them personal questions. Real questions about your life. Not abstract theories. Speaking in the I form, tell me about an issue that is real to you. Questions? The lady here.
As a young woman, I feel like my opinions and my thoughts on my career and my future are not being taken seriously, mostly from older people, older men. Mm-hmm. And how can I deal with such situations? How can I respond good to them?
That's an excellent question. So we have someone here who is a young professional, and she doesn't feel like she's being taken seriously by especially older men in particular. I think that we can look, if we're going to use Stoicism here, we can look at the dichotomy of control. There are some things that you can control that are inside you, and the rest of the things. Now, a person's opinion of you is obviously something outside of the realm of your control. That person has their opinion, they're projecting their own thoughts onto you. They're projecting the way they treat themselves, the way they talk to themselves, in the world that they've been brought up. You mentioned older men, they've been brought up in a world where men, they come from a patriarchy, they come a place and they see a young woman and they don't understand that, you might be the next Prime Minister of Greece. Or the first woman to, win some great award. Or whatever you might choose to do. In today's world, it's a different world. But they are still walking around with that cinema with their own projections. View people as a projection. They're projecting whatever's in their head onto the world. They're not seeing what's in front of you. So using the simple method of the dichotomy of control, you can see that the only thing that you can control are your own thoughts, your own feelings towards yourself, and your own self-esteem, your own self-confidence. And so you can work on that and just listen to what they have to say. If there's something useful that you can keep from that, some warnings they may have, anything, just you have to look through the sand and see if there's something useful for you that you may or may not use. See, that's the beauty of Stoicism, is with Stoicism, with Greek philosophy, you're creating an unshakable inner freedom. No one and nothing outside of you can shake that up. So if you believe in your dreams, if you believe in what you're doing, everything outside of you doesn't need to affect you. Question yourself whether that old man is inside of you. Question if you're bringing that old man into you, who's judging you, who doesn't believe in you, whether that voice, there's a voice inside of yourself that doesn't believe in you. And because when that happens, then that old man has, you've internalized his voice. And that we can't do. So we separate ourselves from what is coming out, from out, and what's coming from within. So I would say, focus, keep what's useful, and live according to your values. Okay, we recommend the 4 cardinal virtues. If you live according to these virtues, they will get you to the results that you want, regardless of what's happening outside of you. So it's all a question of really believing in yourself, working on your own self-doubting thoughts. And as Socrates said, leave the ignorant to be ignorant. They don't mean harm. We don't say, as Socrates said, these people are not evil. They're just speaking out of ignorance. So just like you wouldn't get upset with a little boy who told you, that Santa Claus exists, you're not going to get upset with this old person. You just do what you got to do. And if he happens to be your interviewer, you just do your best in your interview. You do your best. You focus on your confidence. And you will also know that if you're not accepted for that job, it's not the right place for you. All right, so are you kind of satisfied with that answer? Does it help you out? Awesome, thank you for that question. Any more questions?
Would you like to say something more about apatheia? How can one apply this in their life? Like on a daily basis? What? Okay.
So apatheia is not to be confused with apathy, which in modern English has come to mean, someone who's kind of aloof and in their own world. Apatheia means to be fully present, all right, and not allow your passions or your emotions, especially the fear-based toxic emotions, to interfere with your logical way of looking at reality, your objective way of looking at reality. So apatheia is a kind of practice. It can be compared to mindfulness. It's about being aware and putting your emotions, observing your emotions as they propagate in yoga and Buddhism. There are many parallels between Buddhism and Stoicism, and it's this detached way of thinking, practicing, and this is especially in dealing with toxic or negative things that come up. Okay, Stoicism doesn't say not to enjoy life. Of course you enjoy life in moderation, in balance, and especially when fear comes up and your thoughts are blocked because the brain reacts, the reptilian brain comes up, because the reptilian brain has been around for millions of years. The front part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, that allows us to think about our thinking. This is a recent development in the evolution of man, and it's a muscle that needs to be practiced. It's not as ingrained in us as the fight or flight reaction. So let me go back to that. For millions of years, as we have evolved from reptiles, as you see any reptile, a snake or a reptile, you'll see them. They will either attack when they are feeling, when they feel some danger or aggression. They will attack, or they will run away, right? So a human being has that inside. When you feel threatened, you will either attack or just run away. Now, in the later part of our evolution, the prefrontal cortex allows us to have that moment, a moment, 3 seconds, where you can detach from your reptilian reaction and observe yourself. You say, I see the blood is rushing to my head. I see my heart is beating fast. I have a moment to think about the result that I want, and not just to react like an animal. An animal reacts. With the ancient Greek philosophy, that's what they began. They began this process of training people to think before we act, reflecting on our thoughts and actions. So apathia is this constant practice of reflecting first before we react. Reflecting meaning we do away with the toxic emotions and we simply see what is and what's the result we want.